Hello, I'm Sarah with So and So Live, and I'm back with another Friday Sews. And I cannot believe I didn't tell you guys about one really important thing about my fabric haul last week. So I'm going to show it to you today, and it I it could be a little controversial. I'm just going to say it, but for me, it's my if I could leave the sewing world with one parting gift, it would be to change this one thing. All right, I know that intro was a little bit clickbaity, and I don't mean to be that way, but um, I'll get to that in a second. I want to show you my Deer and Doe dress that I finished last week. This is the Blue A dress by Deer and Doe Patterns, and this was in a Needle Sharp subscription box that I got. It's a stretch poplin, and now I'm fully in love with stretch poplins because it's so comfortable. When I put it first on my dress form, I was like, ooh, I hope this fits. But I wear it, and it's like perfect. I love it. I did a couple modifications. I added my sleeve to it rather than the little cap sleeve because that just hits my arm at a really odd angle for a flattering aspect. And and I made a pretty serious shoulder modification because of the way my body is shaped. I planned on doing one more adjustment and then I just completely forgot and got to cutting it out. And that was to take out some of the fullness in the skirt and put it in the back, or maybe just even add some in the back. And I think that's definitely something I would do for a future one, just because of the way my hips are tilted. It puts the less fabric draping in the back than in the front, and so I feel like it could kind of be balanced better. I also added pockets. They're a little high, and I'm going to change that, but I did add pockets. I don't think they're included in the dress because the dress is a little bit like, skimming, and I'm not sure that in all fabrics the pockets wouldn't show to the outside, but I feel like that's worth having the pockets no matter what. All right, the one thing that I would say about this pattern is that it's not drafted in very many sizes. And I'm definitely paying attention to the talk about inclusive sizing and the pattern companies that are offering the most, and sometimes Deer and Doe will have extra sizes in PDF version only. That is the case for this dress, but it still only goes up to about a 48-inch hip, I think. I might be wrong about that. If I'm wrong, it's only up to like a 52. So it doesn't have the most sizes, so sorry about that. But this was one of those purchases when I'm a really big fan of day dresses, that's what I like to call them, and hourglass shape dresses because that's my body type. And when I saw this fabric in one of their subscription boxes, I totally jumped on it. I was like, yeah, I'm always looking for the like perfect day dress. It's kind of an old-fashioned term for that kind of shirt based dress with the waist seam, and this one doesn't. This has princess seams, and this one doesn't disappoint for me at all. And I really like that little detail in the back. I really like things to look different on the back, like have some interest. So I'm really loving it. I wish it came in more sizes, and I am definitely, as a streamer, doing better and better about making sure that I stream things that are available to the most people possible. All right, so what I want to talk to you about with my fabric haul that I didn't mention, I cannot believe I didn't mention this because this is so, like, if sewists that know me know that this is something that's one of my pet peeves. So I used to work at a fabric store. I've worked at a couple of fabric stores, and I used to work at one that cut your fabric on the grain. And what that means is that, say you said, oh, I want 2 5/8 yard, and they would measure it off, but they would open it up, like they wouldn't just cut 2 layers at once, and they would cut it on the grain of your fabric. And sometimes you'd get that customer in there that would be like, oh my gosh, you're cutting my fabric crooked. And then we'd be like, no, it's just on the bolt crooked. And that's typically what happens, is that when fabric gets folded in half, selvage to selvage, and then folded up on a bolt, it doesn't get on there on the grain. And it also kind of warps the fabric. So And especially quilters. The quilters were definitely very keen on this because they're buying such small amounts that sometimes, we'd hand them a long skinny piece, that went from selvage to selvage. And if you folded it on its fold edge, it would look like this. But it really was a straight piece. And once they washed it, it would be perfectly straight. Now, I know now, like a lot of quilters aren't pre-washing their fabrics, but still, this makes a really big impact because you're actually buying the amount of fabric that you're receiving, the amount you're paying for. And a lot of times when you get fabric that's not cut on the grain, you're losing a few inches at each end, especially if you cut things doubled. Like if you're keeping it folded and you fold it back on its fold and put it selvage to selvage and cut it, you have to actually make sure you're staying within the shortest spot, right? So you kind of lose a few inches at each end. And this was particularly aggravating last year when I got some extremely expensive linen with this beautiful poppy print on it. It's super popular. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. And I love that fabric shop that sells it. I really love it. Like they have one of my favorite selections of fabric ever. When I got that fabric, I couldn't even look at it. I was so sad because not only wasn't even cut straight, it was definitely not cut on the grain. I wasn't expecting it to be cut on the grain, but I was at least expecting it to be cut straight. And it literally looked like they took a bunch of fabric and went chop. And I'm not kidding. I'm not exaggerating at all. So, but a couple weeks ago when I went to Milland in Oregon, they cut all of my fabric on the grain. And I was just so like, wow, I think this is nirvana for me, So, and this comes up a lot. Like I talk about it a lot, and a lot of people think it's not possible, and it absolutely is possible, and it's actually not that hard. I remember when I first started working there, I was like, you want me to just cut it on the grain? I don't know how. I was pretty young, and I just felt like without, like a lot of companies have the groove in the table, which, yeah, you cut a straight line, but you're not cutting it on the grain. If you line up the selvage to the edge of the table and cut a perpendicular line, that is not cutting on the grain. That is cutting a perpendicular line to the selvage. And there is a really big difference because so many fabrics have been warped when they get folded and put on the bolt. And so if you look closely at the weave of the fabric, you can see that it's off grain. And this makes a really big difference. In fact, I just had a recent project where I almost didn't have enough fabric, even though I had opened it up. And it's because of the shape of the pieces didn't let me put one on both of them on the fold across from one another because it was cut at such a severe angle. And after I pre-washed it, you can really see that angle. So yeah, I know this is a really obscure thing, but at the same time, this is how it used to always be, and then it stopped being like this. I got a little bit of fabric here to show you. So this fabric here, this is that linen I got for a lining for my blazer sew along, and this is the only, I haven't washed 3 of my fabrics. One because it's a wool knit, and I'm still figuring out how I want to treat that. The other one doesn't need pre-washing because it's a treated waterproof fabric for a coat. And then this one, I'm going to pre-wash it in a kind of a special way to prevent wrinkling, since it'll be inside my blazer. And I know about this method. I've just never used it myself because I'm kind of cavalier that way. But you wash it and then you iron it dry and then you wash again and iron it dry. I'm simplifying it, but that's kind of the overview. But anyway, this is one of my only ones I haven't washed, so that's why I have it out here so you could see, because it's not wrinkly or anything. And this is folded, so here's the halfway point. This is the length grain going this way. Here's the selvage right here, right? It's pretty wide. And normally, say you take your fabric and you line it up corner to corner here like this along the selvage. If you do that on a lot of fabrics, what happens is it's really torqued, right? It does this kind of, you get these diagonal lines across your fabric because it really doesn't want to do that. And then you have to kind of shift your selvage along until it's parallel to the fold, right? And you don't have to do that when your fabric's cut on grain. You get all the fabric that you paid for. And in fact, there's a lot of controversy between measuring your fabric on the fold or measuring it on the selvage, right? So because of this. So they definitely cut this on grain. I watched them do it. When I saw it, I just about cried. I was so happy because I hadn't seen it done in so long, and I was just so relieved that it was still happening out there. And they used all kinds of different methods. They even actually went above and beyond what the fabric store I worked at would do. We would pull threads and things like that and everything, but they were very specific in pulling threads on fabrics that we wouldn't have even done. We would have just cut that because you can feel the grain line with your scissors. With a rotary knife, you can feel it, but it's a little harder. I definitely can feel it better with really nice shears because, you got that blade in your hand and it's just, you can just feel the kind of texture going through. And anytime someone comes back at me with like, there's no way you can cut fabric on the grain by eyesight, you absolutely can. There are definitely fabrics that are really hard, but I got really good at it. And she had that fabric store for 30 years, I think, and it was no big deal to her. So we did it all the time. And there were only a few fabrics where we were like, ooh boy, really hard to tell, and knits were a whole nother category, right? So I'm really appreciative that they did this, and you can even tell sometimes, you can really tell when fabrics that are thready aren't cut on the grain because you will see so many of these little threads because it's cut across so many different ends of the weft, right? The weft is the one going this way, I think. I could be wrong because I think it's warped this way on the length grain and weft this way. I was never a weaver, sorry. And when you are cutting it on the grain, you really only have the ends that are perpendicular to this edge here. You don't have the ends that are also going this direction because that should just be one long thread here, if that makes sense. So anyway, I really wanted to show that with you. And people say, oh, you can do that. Fabric stores would lose money. They wouldn't. All you do is you straighten the bolt off when you get it. When your bolt arrives, you straighten off that edge. And so when you see the bolt in the store, it might look like this on the bolt, right? Like it's wrapped around the bolt. And it might look like this. But it doesn't mean it's not straight. Just because it's perpendicular to the selvage does not mean it's not on the grain. Those are very different things. And we're just accustomed to thinking that perpendicular to the selvage is on the grain line. If it's not warped, it is on the grain. But a lot of fabrics that are folded on the bolt, remember a machine's doing it and it's pulling it really taut, folds it in half, and then it wraps it around the bolt really tight. And what happens is that fabric gets really used to being that way. And so sometimes when we would hand cut to a quilter, especially because it was so small, and they would hold up their piece and go, this is crooked. We're like, it's not though. We promise once it washes, it's going to be straight and it's going to be on the grain. And we would show them. And there would be some that would just be very skeptical. But one thing you can do if your fabric has been cut on the grain and it's feeling a little bit warped is pull it diagonally. Just pull it across the opposite way and it totally corrects. It's pretty magical. So anyway, I really wanted to share that because I was so excited that they did this and it gave me hope. I don't know, why we don't do this anymore? It saves so much fabric and, I can think of so many instances where this almost bit me in the butt that I didn't have enough fabric for a project because I was just counting on getting the amount that I paid for. One time I made curtains and I bought chiffon. Polyester chiffon, nothing fancy. I just wanted something sheer. Apartments didn't come with curtains where I lived, and I didn't really need complete privacy, so I just got this polyester chiffon, and they didn't cut it on the grain. And the width of the fabric was perfect for two of them side by side would be the right amount for a window. I would have gathers and everything, and it would be a great ratio of fullness to the length of the window. But because they didn't cut it on the grain, and here I am all like, oh, all I need to do is hem it and put a rod pocket on the top, and that's it. As I was doing it, I hung it up, I realized it wasn't cut on the grain because my curtain hung at an angle. And if I would have trued that up, so if I have that piece, right, and it's kind of warped because of this being pulled on the bolt, especially something like chiffon, if I would have trued that up, I would have lost like 6 inches because, you know, really the piece of fabric, you know, it looked, you know, like this. And if I would have wanted to straighten it up, I would have, you know, lost this amount and it wouldn't have been long enough for my window. And it wasn't. I had one whole window that didn't have a curtain because of this. So it's definitely a thing, and you might start noticing it. And definitely, I've gotten really nice fabrics that are cut really badly, and it's such a shame because it's such a splurge to, you know, buy that really nice piece of fabric, and you are paying for every square inch of it. And if you can't use it all, that's not great, you know? And I would really argue that, oh, hey, that helps fabric stores, right? People are going to say, oh, that helps fabric stores. They're selling more fabric this way, right? It's in their favor to do this. But a lot of fabrics do sell out really quickly, and they would be saving so much over the course of time if they didn't. So anyway, well, that's my little lecture today. I feel like you come here and I always give you a lecture. I just really wanted to share my joy with you that I found someone that was cutting on the grain. So thank you, Milton Fabric Store in Oregon. That I will definitely go back there. That was pretty exciting to see. And, you know, it was kind of cool that they had on the bolt, every bolt, it said cut or rip or pull a thread. They had very specific instructions. So I really appreciated the time they took for that. So well, anyway, what have you guys been up to? I've been trying to still catch up on all the Friday Sews videos from last week. I really love those, and I'm loving that people like them as well. And so I'm getting there. I'm not commenting on all of them, sorry, but I am watching a lot of them, which is really awesome because I just love the array of things that everyone's up to, which is pretty cool. And my stream, we're working on blocks right now, and whether you want one or need one, and how to get one, and inclusive sizing and things like that. So that's been pretty cool because I love pattern drafting a lot. And I'm, you know, gearing up soon. We're going to be doing, after some of this block making and stuff, we're going to be doing lots of menswear as well. So anyway, I hope this finds you all well. And your spring is starting to turn into summer a little bit. Definitely is here. Let's see, it's 81 degrees here. Woo! So anyway, happy sewing, and I'll see you next time. Bye!